Hey everyone, this is Avik. I work as a general manager for Aerospike in Asia Pacific. It's my pleasure to welcome Hammond Pereira, Hammy from Dream11 to this session. As you know, Dream11 is the title sponsor for India's biggest sporting league, the Indian Premier League. And it really is a fantasy league platform that's catching up in India in a big, big way. Hammy runs among other things, he runs the marquee use case at Dream11 called the Team Service. And he has personally been a user of Aerospike for a long time now. He's also worked for other companies like MX Player, Morgan Stanley, and Amazon in the past. I'm super excited to have him present here about their use case at Dream11. But folks who are on the call, you can feel free to post your questions on the chat window, and we'll take those questions at the end. Without further ado, over to you, Hammy.
Hey, hi guys. I'm Hammy, as Avik mentioned. So I'm the backend lead of gameplay engineering in Dream11. So basically, I lead everything with respect to the gameplay experience in Dream11. So I'm here to explain like how we build a fantasy team service to not only handle futuristic IPL scale, but at the same time, how we handle the stability of the same. So I'll actually begin with what Dream11 is, and then I'll walk you through what Team Service does and what we built around it. So Dream11 is India's biggest fantasy platform. It was founded in 2008. We were the title sponsors of IPL 2020, and we are the official partner of IPL 2021. So we have around 100 million plus registered users. We feature tournaments matches from across 10 sports, including cricket, football, basketball, baseball, NFL, etc. Also, we run contests in all these matches, and we give out around 500 million rupees. Our use case is that we need to create fantasy teams. So we have, as I said, 100 million plus registered users, and when they come and play, let's say in a big tournament called like IPL, they actually should be able to create their fantasy teams, edit their fantasy team. So let's say they've created one, and they feel that probably they need to switch some players, or once the lineups are out, they see that okay, one of their players is not in the playing 11. Then maybe they would want to switch that player with the player who's actually in the playing 11. And then finally they would want to view their team. So this is the basic use case, and then it's like probably a pretty simple problem to solve, but the challenge comes in with respect to scale. We have around 100 million plus users, and then all of them actually come forward and create their teams or edit their teams. So that actually is going to be, I mean, the team service is going to get subjected to a lot of scale. So these are basically like sub problems of the same problem, that we expect 99.9% SLA of 15 milliseconds at around 1 million plus transactions per second. Basically, our read to write ratio is 12:1. So like if we see around 925,000 reads per second, we'll see around 75,000 writes per second. So all this traffic we should be able to serve within 15 milliseconds. One request should actually be served in 15 milliseconds. And then the most important thing, the service should be up. So we need around 99.99% percentile availability. And again, once the lineups are announced, so basically the lineups in Dream11 are usually announced 15 to 20 minutes before the match starts. So at that time, we cannot expect any outages, because that's when like people actually edit their teams. And if you're not letting a paid customer to edit their teams, or if there's any outage, then it actually leads to a huge trust issue. And that is something we have to be careful about. First shot at this particular problem was a bit different. So let's see how we solved it at the first go. Now, initially we had like a team service written in Node.js. And then again, like we had Aurora RDS as a backing store. But now you see, I mean, we expect around 1 million plus transactions per second. So one RDS is not going to cut it. So that's why we actually performed synthetic sharding, wherein we had 5 RDS clusters, and then they were sharded synthetically using a modulo 5 logic. So basically, what used to happen is that whenever a user request comes in, again, before that, we also had had Redis as a caching store. So when a fantasy player either creates, edits, or views his teams, his request comes on team service. Now we need to determine that where exactly that player's data is, that user's data lies in. So what we used to do was we used to do a modulo 5 of their user ID, and then the request used to go in one of these shards. Now the thing is, the service used to maintain constant connections with all the 5 shards, and based on what request it had gotten, of course, I mean, Redis we use as a read-through cache. So if the data is not there, we would go to the shards. And of course, like if the users are going to edit their teams, then we directly go to the shards. So anyway, I mean, the sharding logic used to be at the service layer, where we used to do modulo 5 with respect to the user ID, and then the request used to be served by that particular RDS shard. Let's see what are the limitations of this particular architecture. Another thing is spinning up an RDS and then adding the entire thing to your architecture is pretty manual and tedious. Basically, like, you have to add the connection parameters in your application, then redeploy your application. Again, I mean, the point that I'm trying to make is the entire architecture was not seamlessly elastic. So let's say you have around 5 shards, 5 big shards for IPL right now, and then let's say IPL is over tomorrow. Now downscaling would again be an uphill task, because probably you would want to remove some of the shards. So then you would need changes in your application logic, the connection parameters, and all that. So the point here is that sharding basically is a database's job. And here, I mean, we actually had to do a lot of manual efforts to resize it. Also, the thing is, we have external pipelines from these shards to our other services. Basically, there are other screens where you need to show teams. And so the data from the RDS shards goes through the other services using Kafka pipelines. We had a bin log mechanism for that. So the thing is, if you add a shard, you have that extra overhead of adding a pipeline there and then making sure the data goes. And last but not the least, like, again, if you have modulo 5 now, and let's say you add a shard, you have to do modulo 6, modulo 7, and so on and so forth. Changes in application logic are bit detailed. And in any way, if like you want to query for data, you had to do a mental modulo calculation for the user ID and then go to a particular shard and then query for it. So again, if you see all these are merely like I would say operational limitations. But then something happened during last year's IPL. We call it the outage. Basically, during the semi-final match of last year's IPL 2020, which was played on November 6th between Sunrisers Hyderabad and Royal Challengers Bangalore, users, after the lineups were announced, were unable to edit or create their teams. So let's see, I mean, the cause of this. So one of the shards here, shard 4 in this particular slide, actually started misbehaving, due to which what happened was the team service applications weren't able to connect to shard 4. Now, the thing is, since we have 5 shards, so at least 20% of the users were affected. But this was just not it. I mean, the thing is, you would say, okay, 80% of the users are fine, 20% of the users are affected. The thing is that this issue snowballed in a way where we have an edge layer. And the edge layer basically has a circuit breaker in each of its application nodes. So now if any of the application nodes see that, okay, maybe the upstream service is misbehaving, it would open the circuit breaker, and then no traffic would flow to the upstream service. And that's what happened. So the thing is, the circuit breaker was open around 50 to 60% of that for 50 to 60% of the users. So users, I mean, again, the 20% users, so they were not able to anyway edit or view their teams, but the rest of the users were getting intermittent errors, mainly due to the circuit getting opened. So the after effects of this was, I mean, again, we had to refund all the money. I mean, the users had actually paid to join the contest. I mean, that was one thing. But apart from that, something, I mean, the intangible asset, if you will, which is trust, was breached. And then we got a bit of backlash on all that. We wouldn't actually take this sitting down. We thought, now, okay, I mean, this is it. With operational overheads, we were actually fine. I mean, as long as the service was stable, we never actually, tried to revamp or rewrite it. But now, when we saw that, okay, maybe our RDS can also probably sometimes become unstable, and then we have a lot to lose. Probably we should start looking at a particular revamp. And then these were the tenets of a revamp. So the first thing was whatever new architecture we create, and we basically named it Team Service 2.0, that should be scalable. Basically, the thing is based on the amount of traffic that you receive. So during IPL, you actually receive a lot of traffic, but during non-IPL times, maybe not that much. So your architecture should be elastic enough to upscale and downscale based on the requirements of based on the needs of the business. So these were the two important tenets. The third tenet was the application should be highly stable. It should be fault tolerant, and then all the data that you write to it should be durable. Like there should not be data loss, because if you see, if a Dream11 user is not able to, I mean, they've created a team, but then maybe after some time they're not able to see it, then again that becomes a trust issue. All these things actually boil down to trust issues. Finally, the fourth tenet was strong consistency. Strong consistency meaning like if a user actually has edited his team, their team, and they're able to see a particular team right now, maybe after a second or two or a minute or later, they should not be able to see their old team. So basically, the thing is, for fault tolerance, we may have replicas, but then the replicas have to be consistent. So strong consistency was something we needed. And then again, like we also needed the entire architecture to be highly available with zero outages after lineup announced. So now you see consistency and availability are a bit conflicting with each other, but then probably we have tried to solve for both these tenets together. Let's see how we did that. And then again, Aerospike basically has been the most important aspect of the new architecture, which is Team Service 2.0. So again, this is a simple architecture now. In the previous architecture, you actually were able to see 5 databases with modulo 5. Now you actually see only 1 database, and that database actually takes care of your sharding needs. As I said, I mean, sharding is not your job, it is the database's job. So basically, Aerospike works on record level, and then all our records are replicated thrice. So we have a replication factor of 3. We have a rack aware configuration just to make sure that if one entire rack goes down, we still have 2 other racks to take care of. So the replicas are distributed 1 in each rack. Apart from that, we have a hybrid memory architecture wherein we have data in SSD, index in RAM. Also, we have fast restarts, just so that like if a node is to be restarted, it should not rebuild its index directly from the disk. It should have it in the persistent memory itself. And then we also attached a EBS shadow device, because as you see, I mean, nodes can go down, nodes can crash, but still we want to preserve the data. So we have a backing shadow device wherein all the data that is there in the SSD of a particular node is backed up to a shadow device. In cases where, let's say, if the nodes were to fail, we can actually spin up new nodes and then attach the EBS, and then instead of migrations happening and the nodes getting up to speed, they already have the EBS device or the shadow device to get all the data from. The most important thing in this particular slide is strong consistency. Strong consistency with respect to Aerospike entails that writes are strongly consistent, which means that any write that you make to a particular record, so that write actually goes to a master partition, and that master partition makes sure that only when all the replicas agree to that particular write will I commit the write. With these 2 things happen, you never see stale writes. So basically, a user, if he sees one team now, maybe 2 seconds later, he won't see other teams. So basically, he will always see a strongly consistent view of of their team. The second thing is dirty writes. So dirty reads, sorry. So basically, like if you made a write to a master, but then probably the replicas still are having the older write, it actually makes sure that the writes are committed only when the master and the replica partitions have committed the write. Only then you would be able to see that write. Until then, whatever is there before that, you would be able to see that. So there are no stale reads, no dirty reads, and of course, there's no data loss, because a write is said to be committed when all the replicas agree with the master. Then of course, these are writes. Then we also make use of linearized reads. So whenever like a user actually views a particular team of his, all the requests go to the master partition, and the master partition ensures that it actually connects with all its replicas, and to make sure that, okay, all of them have a consistent copy, and then only because usually regime changes can happen, in which case consistency may not be there. So in this case, the master makes sure that, okay, all the replicas have a consistent copy, and only after consulting with all its replicas, the master would, give back the write. So we have strongly consistent reads as well as writes. So that is something which satisfies one tenet of ours, which is strong consistency. Also, the strong consistency property of Aerospike is immune to split brain, which means that if there's a network partition, it will always ensure that if a particular set of master and replica partitions, if they're active in one subcluster, they are unavailable in the other, just so that you have just one copy of your data and the replicas, of course, only in one subcluster, while the other is totally unavailable. So this is something which strong consistency provides. So now with this architecture, the tenets that are that we have satisfied is scalable architecture. You can just easily add and remove nodes, and your architecture will scale seamlessly elastic. Of course, adding and removing nodes is very easy. The writes are pretty durable and strongly consistent. Now, the only thing that is left to do is achieve fault tolerance and then availability. Of course, even this particular architecture has fault tolerance. I mean, basically, it can survive one node down, two nodes down, even an entire AZ down. But what will happen if the entire cluster were to go down? Or what will happen if replication factor number of nodes or more go down at the same time? So again, these are very rare cases, but if they were to happen, and then again, like with team service, anything that happens once in a blue moon, we have to take care of, because otherwise we may lose not only with respect to money, but also with respect to trust. So that is something which we need to take care of. So how do we solve the consistency versus availability problem? Now, the way we do it is we have a passive cluster. So now let's call the active one as a blue Aerospike and the passive one as green Aerospike. One active, one passive. And the thing is, both of them have the exact same data. I mean, data is synced between the two. Another thing is, if you have two Aerospikes, right? If one goes down, you always have the other to fall back on. Now let's see how that works. Basically, a team service application, it will always connect to the active or the blue Aerospike. So all reads and writes happen in the blue Aerospike. However, we also have dashed lines here. Basically, the application nodes would do a asynchronous write of the same record. Basically, it will be like a fire and forget, just so that both the active and passive clusters are in sync. But let's say if this fails, then what were to happen? So what we have is we have Aerospike Kafka outbound connectors in both these Aerospikes. So what these guys do is they actually capture all the record changes, and then all the record changes are flown back to our Kafka cluster. Now, a Kafka cluster is constantly listened to by our custom Kafka consumers. So in this case, this blue consumer listens to all the record changes that happen to the blue Aerospike. And then based on whatever data it receives from the Kafka topic, it will do a read, modify, write operation. The reason why it does a read, modify, write operation is maybe the application node already did a asynchronous write to the passive Aerospike, and the write was successful. In that case, the consumer need not do anything. It can just ignore the write. But let's say if this write was unsuccessful, in that case, the consumer would make sure that the write which was missed by the service is actually put into the green Aerospike. So we actually maintain record level timestamps just to make sure that any record that comes to the consumer is always the latest one as compared to the record in the green Aerospike, because only then the consumer would write to the green Aerospike, otherwise it would discard the record. And you see there's a Kafka outbound connector from the green Aerospike as well. So it captures change even in the green Aerospike. But then you see there's a difference. Anything that flows into the blue connector is an active record, while anything that flows through the green pipeline, that's a passive record. So the green consumer makes sure that it only consumes active records, and so does the blue consumer. They will only consume active records, and then they'll do a read, modify, write on their respective Aerospikes, just so that like if this weren't there, then the same record would constantly move in a limbo in an infinite loop across the cluster. So apart from that, the team service 2.0 node, they actually maintain constant connections with both the Aerospikes. And then we have a Redis PubSub component as well. So let's say some catastrophe has happened. Let's say the entire blue cluster went down, or let's say more than replication factor of nodes went down, due to which at the same time, due to which there are unavailable partitions. What do? We do a cluster switch. What happens is we send a message to Redis, and then Redis makes sure that the same message is sent to all the team service nodes. In this case, when they receive the message that were published in Redis, each node makes sure that whatever functions they used to perform with the blue arrow spike, now they do it with the green arrow spike. And then again, I mean, the roles are reversed here. So basically, again, whatever I explained with respect to the blue arrow spike will be true for the green arrow spike in this case, while in the blue one, the writes would be asynchronous. So basically, with this kind of an architecture, we are making sure that we have, like in the face of strong consistency, we have total availability. So maybe in the rarest of the rare cases, we would, I mean, the entire thing would go down, and then we may not be able to create everything. But again, it's going to be very, very rare. We have actually made sure of that. So availability and fault tolerance is something which is taken care of by this particular architecture. So now let's see, I mean, what tests that we performed, I mean, just to make sure that the new team service is another team service 2.2 design holds its own. So basically, we subjected it to around 75,000 writes per second and 925,000 reads per second. Again, these are strongly consistent writes and linearized reads. And then again, it was able to perform quite well. We can see results on the next slide. Apart from that, we were able to add and remove nodes at scale, right? And then again, I mean, we could see no outages, no errors. I mean, everything was working as expected. So you see, I mean, here the elasticity properties coming into play. Like we can keep add and removing nodes at high scale and nothing will happen. Then we also tried a single node failure, right? I mean, a single node failure of arrow spike, like a normal node and a seed node. And then again, I mean, everything was, we were able to recover within 30 seconds. Then we also actually tested multi-node failures. So we actually tested, I mean, we failed less than RF number of nodes between AZs. And again, we were able to get everything back to normal within 30 seconds. I mean, there were a bit of socket timeout errors for 30 seconds or less. And then we were able to actually bring the entire AZ down. So you see multi-node failures, meaning like you can actually bring down more than replication factor of nodes in a single AZ. Because you see, we have a rack-aware configuration, which will make sure that all the master partition and the replicas are distributed evenly along the rack. So even if like one AZ goes down, you have like two good full partitions available in the two racks. So again, it was even able to survive that. And of course, we actually got the entire active cluster down, during which time we did a cluster switch. And in this case, it moved to, I mean, everything moved to the passive one. So this was a performance that I was talking about, like 1 million TPS, and we got a P99 latency of under 15 milliseconds. So these were the this is the info that we used for our application instances and our Aerospike instances. So the thing is, in strong consistency, the thing that is used the most is network, because any read or any write always goes through replication factor of node, because the master has to verify everything with the replicas, and only then will it satisfy a given request. So you see the network in and out of Aerospike nodes it a bit much, which is why we went to network optimized instances. Otherwise, like with only 14 instances of both the blue and green Aerospike, we were actually able to achieve around 1 million TPS. So again, this is the IPL till now. The most traffic that we have actually received till now is between a match between Mumbai Indians and Sunrisers Hyderabad, which is when we got around 245,000 transactions per second, out of which like 22.5 thousand were writes, while the rest 212,000 were reads. And again, like P99 was well below 2 milliseconds. So the thing is, like we actually have tested a lot more than what we are actually receiving till now. And of course, like during IPL final, we will again, we are expected to receive almost 2x or 3x of the traffic that is there right now. But then the thing is, we actually have designed this architecture for futuristic scale. So I mean, you just actually scale your application out, and then you would be able to serve more and more traffic. Also, I would take some bit of time to explain about Aerospike managed services. So basically, these guys have been managing our clusters, both our clusters, in fact, the active and the passive one. So the thing is, these guys actually, I mean, when we started with this particular project, we wanted like someone to handle our databases for us. So I mean, we also have multiple other vendors, and so we thought that since team service is the #1 service of Dream11, and a lot of money and trust is involved, so probably we can have the experts look after our database. Which is when we thought, okay, since we are anyway going to use durable and a strongly consistent as well as available database like Aerospike, maybe have the experts look after it for us. Which is when we actually had Aerospike managed services help us out. So basically, they took down all our requirements, the capacity planning, and they also understood our use case, the architecture that we were trying to do, and then they came up with plans, on what kind of Aerospike scheme, what kind of nodes can help us. So that is something which I mean, they've been a great help with respect to that. Also, the thing is, they have been providing us with real-time monitoring and dedicated support, at least during these IPL times. I mean, just 30 minutes before the match, when the lineups are going to go out, we always have one managed services guy on Slack who's actually actively monitoring that. Apart from that, like for normal matches, they anyway have pager duty with which, if anything were to happen to a cluster, I mean, their person would get paged, and then they would do the needful. But IPL, when all the stakes are very high, we have a dedicated person who's actually looking after the cluster, and then keeping us in the loop. Team service with respect to Aerospike is anyway in good hands. I mean, Aerospike is an awesome database anyway, but then we also have their managed services support to take care of it for us. Yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you, guys.
Hey, thank you, Hami. That was an awesome presentation. So I know for a fact that unfortunately, because of COVID, the remainder of the IPL got pushed by a few months. But during the time that the IPL was hosted, the traffic was great on your platform. So kudos for it. We have a few questions that people have asked for you. Maybe I'll start with the first question. You mentioned 2 clusters is to ensure availability in case one cluster goes down. Is that correct? And related to that, why is it that you're not using cross data center application versus using Kafka outbound? And the third part of that question is, how do you ensure consistency between both the clusters if Kafka goes down?
That's right. So the thing is, I'll actually answer the third question first. I mean, the first question, of course, is we do a cluster switch. The third one, we do have XDR enabled in both the clusters, but the thing is, until the entire Kafka infrastructure is working fine, we have kept it in a disabled state, which means both the clusters would be in sync with the help of the Kafka infrastructure. In case the entire the Kafka connectors, the Kafka brokers, if all those things, if they go down, in that case, we will ask the managed services team to enable the XDR, which is there between the 2 clusters, and then probably we'll replay all the records that weren't able to sync into the passive since the time the Kafka infra went down, and then from there, then and there, we would actually start syncing both the clusters using the XDR. The reason why we actually chose Kafka outbound connectors instead of XDR, of course, we are using XDR for the cases when everything, all the Kafka were to go, Kafka infra were to go down. But our first choice was using the Kafka infra because you see, like to maintain a sync between both the clusters, we first do a asynchronous write from the application itself. And if that fails, in that case, we do a read modify write from the consumer. So you see, I mean, we desperately want both the clusters to be in sync, which is why we are having like 2 sources from where the data could go, and then both the clusters could be in sync. And the reason why we do a read modify write is in case like if the asynchronous write were to fail, then we do a read modify write. Now let's say if that was not there, we had XDR and then the asynchronous write as well. Now probably XDR could overwrite the latest record that the asynchronous write from the the application that was made to the passive. Maybe it could overwrite that, and then after that, if I were to do a cluster switch, in that case, probably some users would see maybe a stale copy of their teams because the XDR overwrote whatever was there, the latest record that the application had written to. It overwrote that, and then it never got the chance to maybe have the latest record there. So again, I mean, this is why we have a read modify right on the consumers, which is probably not possible on the XDR. Of course, we have duplicate resolution, but then again, we won't go in the there are edge cases. But yeah, we do use XDR in cases where the Kafka about to fail, because we have to keep both the clusters in sync. So again, I mean, disparate times lead to disparate measures.
No, awesome. Thank you for that. So just the few other questions that people had. So what we could do is, if you can send those questions to me, I'll be happy to reach out to Hammy and get those answered. But Hammy, thank you very much for the presentation. I think that was an awesome one. Stay safe. I know it's troubled times in India right now, so do stay safe. And thank you, everyone. It was an awesome presentation. Have a good one.